Joe Biden is picking someone with experience mobilizing U.S. government resources against a deadly disease to be his chief of staff. Ellen Morrow is joining us this morning. Chief of staff, said to be the second hardest job in the West Wing. The man that Joe Biden has tapped to take this on is a man named Ron Klain. Who is he, Ellen?
Well, Ron Klain has been a decades-long confidant to President-elect Joe Biden, Heather. He actually served in a chief of staff role to Biden when Biden was vice president to Barack Obama. And, you know, the chief of staff position is not a role we talk about all that much, but it is a hugely important function at the White House, essentially works as the gatekeeper to the president. Now, along with his past experience working with Biden, Ron Klain, during the Obama administration, handled the administration's Ebola response. And of course, now, a few years later, we find ourselves in the midst of another public health emergency, one that is getting worse and worse and worse every day in the United States. A few weeks ago, it was a big deal when there was more than 80,000 new cases every single day. Well, for the past few days, we've seen more than 140,000 new cases every day. In places like Texas, you see building makeshift medical treatment centers in El Paso. Mobile morgues have been brought in because so many people there are dying, Heather. Nearly 240,000 Americans have died of COVID-19. So a real staggering situation here. One Joe Biden has said he will make his first priority from his first day in office. Klain will be a part of that effort, and he himself has been very critical of the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic. Here's a campaign ad that Klain was featured in.
Trump administration response to this crisis has clearly failed. And the questions I get most often now are, what would Joe Biden have done differently at every step along the way? And most importantly, what would he do now to stop the coronavirus epidemic?
Now, in a statement last night, Heather, Ron Klain says that he is both humbled and honored to have been picked by Joe Biden for this role.
So obviously with this, and we had the announcement of his coronavirus task force earlier in the week, Ellen, Joe Biden pushing ahead with his transition plan. Even in the face of the roadblocks Donald Trump continues to put up. What is the latest from the current occupant of the White House?
Well, I think Joe Biden making this announcement, Heather, is sort of a way of taking the headlines back and saying that my administration, my transition is full steam ahead despite the obstruction from the Trump administration. I think it also is Joe Biden saying that he is going to be relying on experts. Of course, there are experts in the Trump administration, but we've seen the president rely as well on family members like Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump and denounce experts like Anthony Fauci. As you said, there is this ongoing Republican refusal to accept the reality of this election. President Trump has been tweeting more baseless allegations last night and again this morning. It seems like contesting this election without evidence is a higher priority for him than, responding to this worsening pandemic in the United States. That could mean by the time Joe Biden takes office in January with Ron Klain by his side as chief of staff, they'll be encountering an even worse situation with the pandemic than exists right now in this country.
Ellen, thank you very much. Ellen Morrow is in Washington. Let us say good morning again to Gwenda Blair, who's an adjunct professor at Columbia University's Graduate School of Journalism, also the author of the book, The Trumps, 3 Generations of Builders and a President. She brings invaluable insight into this man and his response and his psyche, and so she's back with us from Chicago. Gwenda, welcome back this morning.
Good morning, Heather.
What do you make of how the president is dealing with losing the election?
It's the same way he's handled his entire career. He is a success. He is not a loser, can't be a loser, will never be a loser. And he's finding a way to frame it. He's a success because it was stolen from him. He's never lost anything.
Anything in that surprising you who've researched him and studied him for a long time?
Better, worse, no. Also, he's found a way to make money out of it. He's fundraising off of the need to, bolster his defense that it was stolen from him, and it's doing well, apparently.
That's interesting because it helps us answer the question of why he's responding and digging in his heels in this way. And one school of thought is he's trying to set himself up financially, or I guess maybe avoid personal legal battles. Why do you think he's doing what he's doing?
Well, as I said, he has to go out. He's going to go out a success. He's going to go out not a loser. And he's getting a political action committee going. He's raising a lot of money. Apparently, in the fine print of anybody who does, contribute money now, the money isn't going towards his legal defense until the coffers of the political action committee are filled. So he's positioning himself to be a major force. And I think there's a real concern to hold on to those remaining 2 Senate seats in Georgia. So they have to keep him front and center, and he has to dominate the headlines. That's how he played it. That's how he's played it all along, how he's continuing to play it.
So when you talk about the future, do you think he's going to, as you say, try to remain a political force to the point of running again in 2024?
I don't think there's any crystal ball that will tell us if that would really happen, but he wants to keep that up there so that he goes out of the White House as a political, as a candidate, not as a loser, as somebody who has a future, not as somebody who's finished. That's how he's going to go out. And I think he's managing to hold on to the headlines in spite of the fact that the coronavirus, as we all sadly know, is pretty much out of control. He's got to keep himself ahead of that. That's a big lift. So what better thing than to say that the election was stolen?
What do you think his emotional state is right now?
Furious, absolutely furious and determined. I mean, he's not capable of saying that he's lost. Somebody coined a phrase recently saying that he has a Richter scale case of narcissism, which I thought was really pretty much summed it up, that it is so large that he can't countenance any other way of looking at it.
There is concern as a result about some of the moves he's making right now. We're talking about the Pentagon, where he's fired experienced defense officials and replaced them with loyalists. And the point that on ABC News, for example, there was public reporting yesterday. There was musing about whether he might even be willing to start a military operation. How far do you think he would be willing to go?
The changes at the Pentagon are absolutely concerning. We know that in 2000, or I guess late 1999, early 2000, the uncertainty about who was the next president in the Gore-Bush at that time later was thought to have held up transition early in that period, and to have been, one of the contributing factors to not having been really up to speed on September 11th in 2001. So having any kind of hold up, any kind of uncertainty, any last-minute changes at the Pentagon seems like a really terrible idea. It also, among the many things that are going on, there was a very large, very quiet arms sale that took place, kind of under the radar. What kind of things like that are taking place? And would Trump actually pull troops out of Afghanistan kind of as a parting gesture, which could destabilize all the things that have been set up to try and keep the lid on until the Taliban really backs down? There's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of key people who have been in past administrations, like William Cohen, who was the Secretary of Defense, have been very concerned.
Those are the things that we're going to be watching in these next 10 weeks for sure. I'd also love your perspective on a headline I saw this morning. It was actually in The Guardian. And Gwenda, it said, can Trump actually stage a coup and stay in office for a second term? The expert opinion is no, he will be removed on January the 20th. But extraordinary, I thought, to use the word coup and to use language for an American president that you might with Maduro or Mugabe or a Milosevic, authoritarian figures past and present. How does that strike you?
with alarm. The Guardian, of course, is hardly the first publication, the only part of the media that has used that word. And there's so much uncertainty, those changes at the Pentagon, Trump's refusal to acknowledge that he has lost, and the Republican Party's very ominous silence in acknowledging the reality that Biden has the Electoral College votes, has the popular vote. That silence is really disturbing. I think one person to really, of all the things going on, also, did I mention Pompeo, the Secretary of Defense, saying maybe
second
a joke,
administration,
maybe satire? Yes, that there'll be a second Trump administration. I think as far as I know, he's the only person who's voiced it gone that far. But anyway, Pence has been very quiet. Is that because he reads the tea leaves and is trying to not, be the guy who, after Trump leaves the White House, is the one person who didn't hang on to that unreality that Trump would continue? Don't know. Remains to be seen.
So, yes, so much of it does. How do you think it's all going to end, Gwenda?
Every sort of credible, historic look, every look at the, what is going on now suggests that the transition will take place. It will be bumpy. Trump will not ever say that he lost. He will go out as a candidate for 2024. He will still insist that he is the winner, that he did not lose. And he has been a guy who has bent reality from the get-go, from the mid-'70s, when the Department of Justice sued him for his organization, Trump Organization, for racial discrimination, and he turned around and sued the Department of Justice. And that was his debut. He's been bending reality since then, always, punching back, accusing the accuser of whatever it was. And then in reality TV, literally bending reality, he is really quite good at it. So he will go out, in his mind, and 71 million Americans, perhaps, the people that voted for him, maybe not all of them, but a big chunk of them, as a success and a winner.
Gwenda, thank you for this morning again. We'll look forward to our next conversation. Gwenda Blair is in Chicago. Thanks.
Thank you so much.